Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met Russian President Vladimir Putin for the first time today for talks focusing on Iran and other regional security issues. The two leaders met at Russia's Black Sea resort in Sochi. The Russian president hailed warm relations between the two countries and noted that the two shared common ground and opportunities for cooperation. Putin hoped for continuity of the trusting relationship that Russia has built with previous Israeli governments.
I hope that despite the internal political battles over Russian-Israeli relations, your government will pursue a policy of continuity. We have developed a fairly business-oriented, trusting relationship with the previous government.
Mr. President, for more than 20 years you have been promoting this process of deepening ties between our countries and bringing them to this level. I want to tell you on behalf of our entire country and all of our people, we see you as a very close and a true friend of the State of Israel.
Over the years, Russia and Israel have developed close political, economic and cultural ties. The strong relationship has helped the two countries tackle delicate, divisive issues, such as the situation in Syria, where Moscow teamed up with Tehran to shore up Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's rule. Now, for more details on this story, joining us now is Julia Chapman from Moscow. Julia, thanks so much for joining us. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is meeting with the Russian president. Tell us a little bit about the agenda and what can we expect, especially when it comes to the topic of Iran.
Yes, Iran was certainly front and center on the agenda for the talks today that were happening in the city of Sochi at President Vladimir Putin's residence there, which he had invited Prime Minister Naftali Bennett to. This meeting took place at his invitation, the Russian side. And there was a range of topics discussed during 5 hours of talks: Iran, Syria, vaccines, and of course bilateral ties, economic, scientific and cultural ties, which are quite strong between Russia and Israel, not least because of the million or so Russian language speakers who live in Israel. But certainly the body language was being watched very closely between these two leaders, it being their first meeting in this capacity. And President Vladimir Putin is known for having had a very close personal relationship with Prime Minister Bennett's predecessor, Benjamin Netanyahu. And ahead of the talks today, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it takes time to build these personal relationships. Nevertheless, he did say that these talks happened in a friendly atmosphere.
Right. Now, Julia, how are other countries reacting to this meeting, especially the United States?
Well, yes, certainly because of the issue of Iran and a number of other issues where there are tensions between Russia and Israel, there were certainly some issues to talk about, not least the deconfliction mechanism that Russia and Israel have in place over Syria to avoid any potential accidental conflict in that country, where Israel carries out airstrikes against Iranian-backed targets in the country, and Russia, of course, is trying to protect the Syrian forces operating there. But on Iran, certainly the US is a big factor as well, much more closely aligned to Israel than to Russia. Russia has been a big backer of the Iran nuclear deal, which Israel is very keen to stop from being revived. And Russia had similar words for Israel and the Israeli leader as it has done for the US in recent weeks, namely that there should be no additional preconditions against Iran to get back to the negotiating table to revive this deal. But the talks were welcomed, of course, by both countries. They see this as an important relationship between Russia and Israel, friendly, if not a little bit complicated.
Right. Julia, my final question for you, as we know that Moscow has played quite a delicate diplomatic game, if you will, in maintaining friendly ties with both Israel and Iran. So will we also see the Russian president warming up to Iran's new president in the future?
Yes, that's right. They haven't met yet, but just days ago, the Chief of General Staff of the Iranian military was here in Moscow for talks with high-level Russian officials, and they discussed the purchase of arms from Russia to Iran. So there are very high-level contacts between Iran and Russia. And as I said, Russia is a very vocal backer of the Iran nuclear deal. It was very upset with the United States from withdrawing from that deal and is incredibly keen to get back to the negotiating negotiating table, which it believes will happen very soon. But certainly there can be expected more high-level ties between Russia and Iran as it does continue to strike that delicate balance between friends in Israel and friends in Iran.
Right, Julia Chapman, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thank you for joining us from Moscow on this story. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.